So I have my rough sketch together, and I'm trying to get my mirrored image together. This is proving to be a challenge, but I'm seeing this through. Checking my frames before I start my line layer. Might have been smart to use separate colors, but I don't figure that out until later. So I take full advantage of the ruler tools when necessary. I have the sequences in mind up to the conclusion of the fight scene, but I'm trying to brainstorm the story. This is a rough draft of the plot. Ox had always found solace in the gym. It was the one place where he could escape the whirlwind of stress and anxiety that haunted him daily. The weight of deadlines, expectations, and self-doubt constantly bore down on his shoulders. But when he was lifting weights or pushing through a run, it all faded into the background. Here, his mind quieted, his body focused, and for a while, he could breathe. Today, however, was different. His muscles ached with every rep. His breath came in short, ragged bursts. The familiar burn that usually felt empowering now just felt like a heavy weight on his chest. 40 minutes into the workout, he could feel his energy draining, his limbs like lead, and the fatigue starting to settle into his bones. Yet, there were 2 more sets to go, 2 more hurdles to clear. He wiped his forehead with the back of his hand and stood still for a moment, trying to collect himself. He could feel a strange pressure in his head, a faint dizziness creeping in. He shook it off, swallowing hard to push past the discomfort. The anxiety, always lurking, seemed to tighten its grip on him, but he couldn't let it stop him now. Just push through, he muttered to himself. Ox grabbed the barbell again, taking slow, deliberate breaths, and began his set. The weight felt heavier than usual, as if the barbell itself was mocking his tiredness, refusing to cooperate. The pain in his arms and legs screamed at him to stop, but he clenched his teeth and pushed through. But then, something unusual happened. A lightheadedness, not just physical fatigue, but a presence, like a strange suffocating aura, began to coil around him. He felt it like an unseen hand gripping his chest, pulling his breath shorter, tighter. It wasn't the usual anxiety he could control. It was something different, darker. He glanced around, but the gym was as it always was. Bright fluorescent lights, the rhythmic clinking of metal weights, the hum of a treadmill. Nothing had changed. But Ox could feel it now, like an invisible force pressing in, unsettling the safe space he'd built here. He tried to shake off the sensation, but it only intensified, squeezing his lungs tighter with each breath. His heart rate quickened and the dizziness worsened, making the world spin just slightly out of focus. breathing heavily. Sweat dripped from his brow, stinging his eyes. But the fatigue was settling deeper now, slower, more deliberate. A fog was creeping in, clouding his mind. Ox closed his eyes, leaning back against the cool leather of the bench, trying to calm his racing thoughts. He reached for his water bottle with trembling hands, his fingers numb from the exhaustion. But there it was again, the strange pressure. This time, it was stronger. It was as if the gym itself, the walls, the air, the very floor beneath him was closing in, warping into something foreign. A low hum echoed from somewhere in the distance, growing louder, more oppressive. Ox opened his eyes and looked around once more, but the gym was still the same. Or was it? The lights flickered, just for a second, and in that moment, the room felt colder, darker, as though something had shifted. He blinked, trying to make sense of the moment, but his vision blurred. He could feel himself slipping into a place he didn't recognize. The safe space he had fought so hard to build was no longer his. It was being overtaken by something he couldn't see, something that made his skin crawl. Was it real? He shook his head, trying to clear the fog. But all he could hear now was the sound of his own heartbeat, pounding louder in his ears. His body felt too heavy to move, too exhausted to even lift his arms. And yet the pressure, the force, continued to press in. Ox gripped the sides of the bench, desperate to focus. Just breathe, he told himself. It's just the exhaustion, just the stress. But the words felt hollow. The gym, his refuge, was no longer the sanctuary he had always known. It had become a place of suffocating darkness, where his mind couldn't escape. No matter how hard he tried, he wanted to leave, to break free. But something held him there, tethered to the weight of his own thoughts. The aura, whatever it was, had taken hold.